So, hello and welcome to Well Matters Podcast. I am Heidi McAlpine, the host of Well Matters Podcast and owner of Align OT. I'm an occupational therapist, and I am connecting and sharing wellness ideas, programs, and research with healthcare professionals, wellness providers, and the community to help empower communities, people, individuals, communities, and populations. And today I am so excited to have with us Teri Bach, and she is a transformational money coach from Untapped Potential Coaching. And she works with professional women who earn well, but are still struggling with money. So she's going to share a little bit about herself, some of the ideas and people that she's worked with that have worked with her techniques, share one of her techniques with us. And then at the end, we'll provide some of the information so you can contact Teri if you are interested. So welcome, Teri. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. My pleasure. I am excited to learn just as much as I'm excited for our audience to learn about what you have to offer. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the coaching. I'd love
Okay, it's a little detailed. I'll try to keep it brief. But so when I lived in California, I worked as a marriage and family therapist for about 28 years. And I wanted to move back to Minnesota in the area I grew up in because my mom was older and I wanted to spend more time with her before she died. So I switched over at that point. I'd been wanting to switch out of doing therapy into doing coaching anyway. And this seemed like a really good time to do that. But I loved the work of doing therapy. I liked the deep work that I did, and the different types of coaching I tried just didn't really do it for me. So I found a book by a woman I followed a lot, and she had written this book called Tapping into Wealth. And Margaret Lynch Rainier is her name. And I read this book. I devoured this book. I mean, it really resonated with me. And I thought, this is the kind of work I want to do. It spoke to me. I worked every exercise, which I never do in a book. And I thought, this is it. And I found out she was just starting a certification program for coaches. So I enlisted and became a Tapping into Wealth coach. So what I was most impressed with that story is that, well, first of all, I started working with a Tapping into Wealth coach myself. As we went through the program, we kind of exchanged sessions and did all of that kind of thing. But doing my own work with a coach, I really kind of discovered all these reasons why I had struggled so much with money throughout my whole therapy career. And I did well. I earned well, but I worked like, I don't know, 50, 60 hours a week in order to make a decent living in California. So I found a lot of this old programming, limiting beliefs, all of this stuff that I had learned from my parents. And this was a result of working through this program. And the biggest thing was I realized how small my world had been. I was really living in my comfort zone, and I was afraid to be out there. And I didn't realize any of this stuff because I was comfortable. I had a good life. It was a good life. But when I started doing this work, I really saw these parallels between how my parents felt about money and how I was handling my own money. There was just, it was almost identical. And that's, I think, what people are most amazed with when they do this work is, oh my God, I'm doing exactly what my parents did, and I didn't want to. Yeah. So anyway, after clearing a lot of my old beliefs, my old programming and all of that stuff, I felt so much lighter. And I started to make a really good income as a coach. And so over the years, I've worked with a lot of women now and a few good men, doing this kind of work and helping them really get rid of that old programming. I like to call it their money story. We all have a money story, and that is, the beliefs, the old programming, our thoughts, our emotions, all of that stuff around money. And so I help women change their money story so they can get out of debt, so they can stop overspending, so they can start earning more, depending on, what they're wanting to work with.
So you brought
Yeah.
two great points, and one is getting out of your comfort zone. And the
Yes.
second was even though you were a therapist, you felt that you needed a coach to help guide
Mm-hmm.
you through this. So tell me the differences between, because somebody can pick up a book and start reading.
Right.
I've
Right.
done that. But
Sure.
what happens? What's the difference between reading a book and thinking that you can do this on your own versus working with a coach, and how that made a difference in your approach and success?
The difference was, and I thought, as a therapist, I thought, oh, I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody else to help me, you
I
know.
can identify with that. That's why I
Yeah,
asked you that question.
yeah, good question. And so I was keeping notes. I kept a journal as I was going through the book. And I came up with a lot of stuff. And I'll talk about the technique that gets used in this program later. But I was using that to clear as I went and all of this stuff. And I was feeling pretty proud of myself that I was doing this work. And then I invited this other woman to work with me. We exchanged. She was the coach one week, I was the coach the next week. We just did that back and forth. And I was amazed at how working with somebody else, I could go so much deeper, because she would say something to me and, we don't see our own blind spots. And so she would ask me something and I would say, yeah, that's not an issue for me. And she'd say, okay, last session, this is what you said. So I know that that means this. So yes, it is an issue for you. And so she'd really call me on stuff that would come up, and then, we'd work on that. And so we were able to go so much deeper. Um, you, I think most of us can probably do our own work to a point, but it really takes working with another person, a coach or a therapist or whatever, to really go deep.
Yeah, and get past your comfort zone, right?
Yes.
Because we talk
Yeah.
about trauma, and we talk
Mm-hmm.
about how our protective reactions take over when
Right.
something feels uncomfortable inside.
Exactly.
And then your
Yes.
mind starts, you have your story in your
Yeah.
mind again telling you otherwise.
Well,
So
and
I think
especially
that's
if you've
important.
had any, yes. And especially if you've had any trauma, you go into one of the fight, flight, freeze. They have some other terms for it now, but you go into those automatically. So if you're going into a freeze state, there's no way you're going to be able to do the work alone.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point, and it just demonstrates how important it is to work with someone like you, a coach who's not only just studied it, but
Right.
also has practiced it. And
Yes.
you can talk about the pitfalls and the barriers, and maybe you could bring those up a little bit in your story. But how did you get from now being in California, wanting to change things up a little bit, and then transferring here, and then what?
I'm not sure. You mean, what has my journey been in the
Your
coaching,
journey.
or
So you
okay.
switched your thinking, you got into the coaching, and then what? So what stage did you get to the next
Okay.
stage?
Well, I did the tapping into wealth. I was in I had a lake home in Minnesota next to Fargo, North Dakota, which is where my mom was. I was doing networking. I was doing well as a tapping into wealth coach. And then my mom died in 2018, and I felt lost. I felt totally lost in my life because I had been taking care of her for 5 years. and really, going in and visiting her. She was about 45 minutes away from me. And so I spent a lot of that time. And so when she was gone, I thought, I don't know what I want to do with my life now. I had switched from doing therapy, and that was my comfort zone. I had moved into this new area. It was still kind of new in the tapping into wealth. I had done it a few years, but after mom died, I just felt I had a meltdown, basically. I really had a meltdown and started questioning everything about my life. And, what do you want to do? You're not really happy. You're kind of lost right now. I didn't love where I was living anymore. It had been my dream for many years to live on the lake there. And while mom was alive, it was fun. I got to see her. I made some friends and all that. But after she was gone, I thought, I hate the winters in the middle of that. And especially after living in California for so long. And I thought, I don't want to live here anymore. And I thought, what is missing in my life? Because I'm not happy. I'm comfortable, again, but I had already identified that I tend to get into my comfort zone and stay there. And so I thought, I don't want to continue to live in my comfort zone. I really want more in life. I don't know how old I was at that point, but in my 60s. And so I'm thinking, if I'm going to do something different with my life, it better be pretty soon. Not that in your 60s is old, but it's like, I want to start really living my life the way I want. And so I thought, okay, so what's missing? And I realized travel. For me, travel is so important in my life. It was used to be a part of who I was. I traveled a lot. And then for years, I didn't travel at all. And so I knew that I had to incorporate that into my life. And so I switched up what I was doing as a coach and started working with women over 50 who just wanted more out of life. And maybe they were like me and they were, confused as to what that looked like, and they needed some help in figuring that out. So I did that for a few years, or probably 3 or 4 years, and I incorporated the money piece into it. But I found, aside from the fact that almost every coach is doing that work right now, I thought I really miss that empowerment piece of the money work that I do. And so recently I decided to go back fully to the money work because it's so important to me.
You brought up a great point, and it's what interests you to spark that fire in you, to
Yes,
motivate you towards
yes,
change, towards doing something that you felt had value, right, at this stage of the game.
yeah.
And as
And
I
I think, yeah, in the work that I did with women over 50, it's, what I realized, because I did a lot of research, I love doing research, but I realized after 50, women kind of start waking up. It's like we've been in a fog for a lot of years. So many of us do live. Now, this isn't going to pertain to everybody, of course, but generally speaking, we get involved with our families. We take care of our spouses or our children and our parents, and we're socialized to take care of everybody else. But we're not so good usually at taking care of ourselves.
right, creating a sense of balance.
Yeah. And so I think by 50, or, I'm using 50, but it could be any age around that time, midlife somewhere. Our parents are older or have died. Our children have possibly left home. And so we're left in a different situation than we've been in for years. And some women at this point decide they don't want to even stay in their marriage. And so all of this happens when we're, generally in midlife. And so it's a time of huge transition for women in particular, men too, but women in particular.
I think that's a good point too,
Yeah.
is through every stage of life, there's a transition. And
Yes.
you mentioned as a woman getting older, what
Yeah.
starts to occur, okay, we've been involved in habits and roles. And now our roles change. the habits are the same, but it's a comfort zone, but we're not, something's missing inside, and you get that feeling.
Exactly. And that's when a lot of people say, oh my gosh, what I want more, you know? And so my revelation with the travel, and I think I mentioned this to you before, was before I moved. So now I'm living in Wilmington, North Carolina. I moved here 2 years ago, but as I was packing up stuff and getting rid of stuff and all that, I found my high school yearbooks, which I hadn't looked at in a long time. And I was reading through, where people will write in your yearbook and all of that stuff. I was reading, and one of my good friends in high school had written, probably when I was like 16 years old, I hope you fulfill your dream of living in Europe and sitting at a cafe writing your book. And I was thrown. I mean, I thought, oh my God, that's still my dream. And I had forgotten it for 50 years. I had suppressed it. And so it was like, that is still my dream. And so I'm bringing it up again, and I'm starting to travel more now, and still have that book in mind to write. I love to write, and I love to travel. So
we met through Laura DeFranco and her Brave Business, right?
Right.
She had similar experience where she switched. She was a PT, she had a practice and everything, but she switched. Life transitions, and she wound up starting Brave Healers Productions, where she's writing books to help. Are you part of that as well? Have you?
I have not. In fact, I just met Laura when I started this class that she's doing. Yeah, but it's something I want to look into.
You have great experiences, to be able to share, and I think a lot of women could, and men can identify with you at a certain stage in their life and going, this isn't really fulfilling me.
Right.
And they do other things versus something that really matters and has value.
Exactly. And going back to the money work that I'm doing now, again, is when people look at money, it's like, okay. And a lot of people avoid it, because who wants to look at your money, especially if it's not doing well? And it's, I like to think that we focus on money to some degree during the work that I do with people, but it's really more about empowering the person. So what we're doing throughout the whole process is we're doing different exercises and visualizations to get really clear on that root cause of the money struggle. And usually it's us, I mean, it's it's our limiting beliefs, it's how we feel about things, money, ourselves, all of that stuff. So when you get clear on what these limiting beliefs are, whether it's about yourself or money, and all these emotions of anxiety and stress and sadness and regret and all of these kind of icky feelings we can feel around money, but they're tied into so many other areas of your life.
Right.
We get really clear on that stuff. And then we use a process called EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, or tapping. It's got a lot of names to it. But we clear and we change a lot of that stuff once we've identified what it is. And so by the end of, I usually like to work with people for 6 months, just because I think it takes that long to really make a lot of progress.
Right.
And by the end of that, women have told me, oh my God, I feel so much better. I feel lighter. I feel more confident. I don't have that anxiety. I don't wake up with that anxiety. It's not keeping me awake at night. All of that stuff, because they have changed. Right. They are more empowered, and that changes their money as well.
Right. So it's great to hear that you help them identify where the problem is rooted.
Yes.
The beliefs, where they came from, and then empowering them with tools that they could use outside, that they don't depend on you for the rest of their life.
Exactly.
You know,
Yes.
they can utilize it. Yeah.
Yes. As a therapist, I use some different tools, but you had to be a licensed therapist to use them. And so when I started doing phone sessions, this is before Zoom, I use tapping more frequently than I used to. I've used tapping for many years, but as a coach, I thought I like this better. It's more empowering to people because I can teach it in 2 minutes and maybe three. And then you can use it for the rest of your life, as you said. Yeah.
Well,
So
they're
it's more
simple and
empowering.
effective. Simple and effective. I think people that are
Yes.
in that mode of thinking can get overwhelmed with new things introduced.
Yes. And I worked with a client. She was the former therapy client, but I'm still working with her, not on the money piece, but just on all of her trauma. And she would come and to our sessions and she'd say, I'm overwhelmed with this new trauma that came up. She had horrible abuse. And so I would tell her, you know, don't go into the memory, don't go into the trauma because it was too much for her at that time. Use the tapping on your own in between sessions if you want. This is when she had gotten a little further along, and just tap on the emotion. Don't go into all the other stuff, just bring the emotion down,
Right.
you know.
So helping to regulate.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Because tapping can be used in so many different ways. And for her, that really, really worked. And then by the time we had our session, she was able to talk about it a little bit more because she wasn't overwhelmed with the emotion.
I liked how you shared a couple of examples, one with yourself. I think
Mhm.
it's important for people to understand, we're not perfect, we're always learning.
We are always learning. Yes. And I'm still learning and I'm still working on myself, you know.
And that's
It's
important for people to know so that you can connect and get that relationship, that rapport,
right.
the people that you work
Absolutely.
with. So I
Yeah.
think that's important. And also, who you've worked with trauma and how you make that easy and not easy, but less complicated.
Yes. Yes. And I have another technique that I can use with people who have been traumatized so they don't have to get re-traumatized as we're working together.
Right.
Um, yeah. So I think I tend to draw out people who have had trauma, one, because a lot of us have, and two, because that was my background when I was a therapist too, was working with trauma.
Right. So how do you see the biggest issue or obstacle with the targeted audience that you work with?
Um,
And how do you overcome that to help them get past their barriers?
well, I think we all have limiting beliefs and we all have them and they were all learned. Our beliefs were all learned by the time we were 6 or 7 years old, when our brain was not fully developed yet. And so I think the biggest belief is most of us don't know what our beliefs are. I mean, some of us do, and some of us know what some of them are, but there are a lot of beliefs, and our beliefs run us because everything we do, think, and feel is really filtered through that belief. So if you or if you started believing in kindergarten that you were stupid or something because of something that the teacher said and then the kids laughed or, whatever that was, and it might be over time, not just one incident. But let's say you feel stupid. So now going forward into adulthood, every time something happens like that or something happens where you don't get the right answer or you can't figure something out, you're going to immediately go back to that belief of I am stupid until you figure out that that's a belief you have going on and change it. And the tapping works really well to go into those beliefs and change them into a positive belief.
So you think with the tapping, it just breaks that pattern of thinking? You focus more on the tapping. Tell me a little bit about like what is tapping?
tapping is really tapping on the meridian points on your face and upper body. So if you went to an acupuncturist, they're sticking needles in, different places on your body for anxiety or, some of the emotional things. Pain and all of that kind of stuff. And tapping can be used for pain relief and all of that as well. So we're doing the very same thing that an acupuncturist is doing, except we're not using the needles. So we're tapping on those same meridian points, but we're keeping them to, our upper body and face because, tapping on your back would be really uncomfortable. But so it works like that. And so there's a lot of science behind tapping and a couple of theories around why it works are that we have these meridians of energy flowing through our body. And when something in our life is not going well, it's because there's a block in that energy flow. So tapping on the meridian points opens up that flow again. That's one theory.
So do you feel like it needs action? So you can think and tap and break that pattern of thinking, but do you feel the tapping just gets that moving now?
That's one theory.
Okay.
The other science has been proven. They've done a lot of testing on tapping and why it works and all of that stuff. And anybody can just Google the science behind emotional freedom techniques.
Okay.
And you'll get a lot of science behind all of this. I never go into a lot of it because I'm not all that interested in why it works. I just care that it does. But the other theory is that the amygdala part of the brain, the part that's in the emotional brain, its whole purpose in life is to see danger for us, to keep us safe.
Right.
Which worked really well in the days when there were wild animals running around and all of that. It would warn somebody to run because there was a lion chasing after them or something. But now, because we don't have that kind of life, the amygdala still works overtime sometimes. So let's say you have to get up on stage and speak. Okay. Your amygdala says, danger, danger, because it's so you start feeling that anxiety, that stress, that nervousness about getting out on stage. Well, speaking on stage is not really a dangerous situation, but your amygdala has kind of convinced yourself that it is.
Right.
So what the tapping does is because you're tapping on these meridians, what you're doing is you're sending a calming signal to the amygdala part of your brain that you're safe. Everything's okay, and it calms it down.
So it's a form of regulating.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. And then you gave the resource in case they want to look further, because I think some people do like research, especially
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Now, one of the places I always go to is, I'll give them a plug, is the tapping solution.
okay.
And so I think it's just the tappingsolution.com. They have a whole lot of stuff going on. They also have free World Summit, Tapping World Summit every year. They just finished up one on pain relief, which was really good. And I think the other one is always in February. And they're all free. They interview like 23 different people who do various types of tapping and tapping on different types of things. And it's all free. And then you can buy, the interviews afterwards if you want. But yeah, so it's another resource.
So a little pun on words. Healthcare providers are starting to tap into the tapping technique and
Okay.
the benefits of it, because it is such a simple and effective tool based on the research and what a lot of other professionals are saying about it.
Absolutely. And I read a long time ago that a lot of clinics and hospitals were using tapping before the doctors would even see the patient, because so much of pain is emotional.
Right.
And so if you can bring down the emotional piece of it, then the medical profession is dealing with the physical part.
Right. Right.
Yeah, which makes it easier for everybody, really.
Well, I've utilized some techniques with Align OT as an occupational therapist, and this is one that I'm
Right.
not as familiar. That's why I was very curious about it and to find out more about the research and just to understand some case studies and
Okay.
what types of populations they've worked with. So I'm glad if you want to just repeat that resource one more time.
Sure. It's the Tapping Solution is the name of the company. So it's the tappingsolution.com. And they have all kinds of resources on that website as well.
So that's
Yeah,
tappingsolution.com.
right.
For anyone who's interested in the research and to find out more about tapping and the benefits of tapping for our health and well-being,
Yeah.
that would be great. And I'd love it. We've got, probably about 15 minutes. So I'd love if you could share a technique with us, a quick technique.
Okay. Now this is, keep in mind, an hour session. So I'm going to try to combine it into a very short time. So I'd like if everybody, so remember this is about money right now, to think about, we're going to talk about your outrageous goal. So we can do this a few different ways. So if you would pick maybe what you're currently earning, or if you're not working right now, what your best income was a month, let's go monthly. And then I want you to add a couple of, maybe a thousand to a couple $1,000 to that amount. Okay. And write it down. Write it down. And now I have another part that I do with this, but I'm going to skip that for the purposes of today. I want you to double that number. Okay.
What's
Now
funny,
that
I'm just afraid to put that down. Isn't
yes,
it funny? I'm like, wait a minute, that seems like an awful lot, but you're reaching
yes,
the optimal, right? That you're thinking that you could possibly make.
yes. Now in another session I do, which I didn't bring my notes for, but I go through that number, both numbers, with 4 different limiting beliefs, like it'll be really hard, it's impossible, all of that kind of stuff. And then we do the tapping on those beliefs to bring that down, because once you bring the emotion down,
Right.
then you believe it. It's neutralized the emotion around it. So people then look at their outrageous goal and say, oh my God, that's totally possible after we've done the tapping on it. Yeah.
It seems
So
like,
you can see how it changes that belief.
yeah, I mean, what happened with me, and I feel through my learning and research and just my reading, and how if you're playful with something, with a goal, and you're curious about it rather than
Mhm.
getting nervous and
Exactly.
that it makes you smile right in that number. I'm looking down going, wow, that would be awesome.
Okay, so let's test that out for
Okay.
you. So I want you to close your eyes. Everybody close their eyes. And imagine that you're on a stage. You're standing on the stage by yourself. And I want you to visualize an entire room full of people you know. So it's your parents, your grandparents, all of your family, your friends, your ancestors, your high school friend, everybody you've ever known in your life and beyond, if you're into that. Okay, and just imagine them sitting out in the audience. And you have written this outrageous goal on this big, huge sign, and you're holding it up in front of the audience, all these people you know. And now I want you to say 3 things. The first one is, I want this.
I want this.
I can do it.
I can do it.
I deserve it. And first, I want you to notice how you are feeling. How are you feeling saying all that, standing up on the stage? Just kind of notice that. What's going through your body? What are you thinking? So now I want you to look out at the audience. How are they reacting? Hopefully some of them are cheering you on, but look at the ones who aren't. Look at those people. Those are the ones that we want to look at. What are they saying? How are they looking? What are they doing? Do they have their arms crossed? Are they kind of whispering? Are they angry with you? Or are they kind of dismissive? Just kind of notice what's going on in the audience. I'm looking up in your eyes. And I don't know if you want to share any of that with us or.
Definitely will.
Okay.
Because something as simple as that was very effective.
Yes.
And because of our previous conversations in my own work with myself and my beliefs, a lot came together in those few moments.
Okay.
So we talked about that doubling the amount that I normally have made and going, wow, and going from, wow, that's a lot to, oh, that would be great. That's my thing. That would be great. That would be great, right?
Yeah.
And then you went to the audience. First of all, being on stage felt great. It expanded my energy.
Okay.
Then when you talked about family and friends and people in my life, that just expanded my heart, my energy, and the ability to I can do this. This is great to be in front of these people that I love and care about.
Okay.
To share this accomplishment.
Okay.
And so, but then you went to, which I don't always like, went to is, what about those people that aren't really in your same space and time?
Yeah.
They're in their own zone and their own feelings. And it's people that I've had conflicts with that I've just kind of said, you know what, I can't be there anymore with them because they weren't supporting, they were sabotaging. They weren't building me up.
Right, exactly. Good. So you had a different experience than a lot of the clients that I've worked with have had. Now, some feel like you do, and it's like, oh, that felt really good. Okay, great. What some people experience is this, oh my God, I have to get off the stage. They're so uncomfortable standing up there, admitting to wanting more money.
Yeah.
And all this shame comes up and embarrassment and all of this anxiety, all of this stuff comes up for them. And then when they're looking out at the audience, obviously there are going to be people who are cheering you on. That's good. But they're noticing other people who are like whispering, and saying things like, who do you think you are? And you can never do that. And all of these kinds of comments.
Right.
So what the audience is really portraying in this exercise, and again, we're just doing a really tiny little snippet of it, is your greatest fears. All those things that you're telling yourself, you may not even be aware of. But those are your fears, your beliefs, your emotions, all of that is all projected onto the audience. And that's why this exercise is so telling, because once we do this exercise in a lot more detail, then those are the things that we tap on. Those are because now we know what you're saying to yourself that's sabotage.
Right.
Yeah. And we want to get rid of all that stuff. So it really doesn't have anything to do with the people in the audience. It's just a projection. And you're projecting it onto appropriate people, probably.
Right.
But yeah.
You know, and
So
what happens when you might have 20 people cheering you on and those 3 people that aren't, you're
yeah,
focused more in on those people and how they're gonna feel,
exactly.
and then that puts you in space, and I can
Yeah.
identify with that, you know, earlier in my life and sometimes just as a professional, you want that support, but not everybody's gonna be supportive, and how do you do.
No, no, they aren't going to. And those might be some of your own fears getting projected out there as well. That's kind of the point of that exercise. Yeah. So
So
that's kind of the work we do.
I like that because it just brought it together, and then you sharing prior to the exercise
What
helped.
I like, yes, and what I like about this is I've worked with a lot of money mindset coaches, and my I think they're doing good work. I don't mean that, but I think the difficult thing is you have to come up with this stuff on your own. And it's like, I don't know why I'm sabotaging myself. Whereas these are visualizations and exercises to help you get past the conscious mind into your subconscious mind. So it's just coming up. You don't have to think about it.
Right,
And that to me is so much easier.
right. No, I really like
Yeah,
that exercise, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.
sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
Now, who would you like to connect with, or who would you like to gain a relationship with for this to help with your mission?
Um, I think well, not obviously, but financial advisors
Okay.
and financial planners are good referral partners. We can refer to each other because once I get people in a better place, then they're probably going to need a financial planner or an advisor because I don't do that kind of work.
Okay.
Also, if financial advisors and planners are working with somebody who's really struggling with their money and they want to get to the root cause of it so they can clear it quickly and move on, then I would be a good referral partner for them.
Okay. Now,
I also, oh,
you may not realize this, but occupational therapists as well work with money management, time management,
okay, yeah,
work readiness skills, wanting to be independent maybe after being involved in a program
okay,
for addiction or mental illness, and now they're balanced a little bit more and they're a little more focused and ready to move forward.
okay. I didn't
Work with
realize that.
different
Yes,
programs like Family Service League will provide Access VR.
okay,
Familiar with that? Where they help them to get a job, but OT
yes,
on in the community and help them with money management, time management, self-esteem, interpersonal skills, all of those
right.
need to keep a job and do the things. So occupation means doing the things you love, need, and want to do.
Good referral then, or a good connection. Yeah,
So this would be,
yeah,
there's a lot of OTs that will be listening to this podcast,
okay.
hopefully, you know, within the future. And I think that's another thing to consider. It's because we don't know who works with money management all the time, right?
True. And I'm not helping them manage their money, just to be clear. I'm really working at that root cause of why they're struggling. And then I would,
Refer.
refer them to somebody who manages their money because that's not my strength.
No, I get that. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
understand that. So you'd like to partner with others who work with empowering women as well.
Yes.
You said
Yes.
financial advisors, planners, anyone struggling with money, but would like to connect so that they can get to the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah. My mission is really to help empower women. We've been disempowered too long, and I think things are changing, of course, but I'm excited about helping women get to that next level and then the next level and the next level and wherever they want to go. And I happen to do it through empowering them with changing their money story.
Maybe we can get some talk hosts out here where you can talk about this tapping program. This is
Yes.
all that you have to offer. I think it's so important, especially for women that don't know where to start. And that's
Mhm.
very common. And most women who are transitioning and don't have the support system.
Exactly. And on my website too, I didn't mention my website, but coachteribach.com. I also have a little video on how to do the tapping and a page that explains a little bit of the science behind tapping too. If
All right, great.
people would want to do that as well.
Right. So a little bit about your contact information, if you want to share that for anybody who wants to find out more and how they can contact you. I know you shared your email, right?
Okay. So
Okay.
I gave you my email. I don't have all my stuff with me, like the Facebook I don't have
Okay,
with
I
me,
have
but
that. Yeah, if you
okay.
so it's Teri at untappedpotentialcoaching.com. And
Yes.
if you want to schedule a chat, it's https coach Teri
Kind of
Bach.
long.
Yeah, Coach Teri Bach coachesconsole.com/calendar/chat-with-Terry.
I think it would be easier just to email me and I can send them the link to the session to just chat with me for a few minutes, find out what their money story is, if it's a good fit to work together, or if I can refer them somewhere else.
Okay, so and she's also on Facebook. I think if they type in Teri Bach,
Yes,
you come up to, and you're also on LinkedIn as well.
I
So
am.
that's a couple of ways to contact you, find out a little bit more about you and the techniques that you offer women to empower them financially,
Yes.
so they can move forward in life and pass their transitions. So thank you so much, Teri. Thank you,
Yeah.
audience, for listening. We appreciate your time. And we're here about empowering both Align OT and with Teri and the Transformational Money Coach at Untapping Potential Coaching. So thank you so much, Teri, and we
Thank
hope
you,
that the
Heidi.
audience found this beneficial and that we
too.
can connect and collaborate with other professionals to empower women even more.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay in touch.
Okay, bye-bye.